Hey everyone, welcome to the channel where we love to talk about movies. Welcome especially if you're new. Today we're going to do a Movies Monthly for March of 2023. So in a Movies Monthly, I do just kind of a variety of categories, starting off with a tier list looking at all the movies I saw in theaters of the last month and just ranking them in different tiers. And then secondly, we look at, cover all the movies and TV shows that I watched at home, whether they were new or things that I've been rewatching. I just like to share the sort of content that I enjoy. And then next up, we look at any steelbooks that I may have picked up for the month. I actually don't have any steelbooks that I picked up in the month of March, so we're not doing that section this month. And then after that, we look at any soundtracks that I listen to that I've got as recommendations. I listen to a lot of movie soundtracks, so I just like to share, ones that I think are worth checking out, and then just in general ones that I might listen to but wouldn't necessarily recommend. And then we end things off just looking ahead at the next month, which in this case is April, and I just talk about what I'm looking forward to most. And like to hear kind of in general, love to hear any comments you have, what stuff you're watching, what are you looking forward to most. But with that, let's dive on in and get to this Movies Monthly. So first up, we've got the tier list. So this is any movie that I saw in theaters in the month of March. I rank in a tier list, so we go and look at what tier do they fall in, and then at the end I'm going to kind of organize them per tier, which ones I like the most on the left, going to ones I like the least in the tier on the right. So this is in chronological order that I saw them. So the first movie I saw in March was Creed 3, and this was a great film. I absolutely loved it. I think it's my favorite Creed film, mainly because I don't remember the first one all that well. I think I watched it on a plane several years ago, and then I watched Creed 2 in the month of February. It was fine, but didn't stand out to me. But Creed 3 was just really amazing. I think the story and the characters are really what does it for this film, and I absolutely think it's worth checking out. So that's a solid A in my book. So that goes in the A tier. And then next up we have Operation Fortune. This was a film that is pretty forgettable. I can give you tell the main story off the top of my head, but it really wasn't that special of a film. Nothing against it or anyone that made it. I'm sure it was a lot of work, but it didn't stand out to me. It wasn't bad. It was easy enough to sit through, but it was just fine. Then we have What We Do Next. This was a film that I knew nothing about going into, and I was, pleasantly surprised. I think this is a great film. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes long, or a little over that. So there's not that many movies that are that short, but this movie crammed a lot into that hour and 20 minutes, and it felt like it just had so much to delve into. I really liked the characters and the story that it had to tell. So this one I thought was a great film. I absolutely loved it as well. Next up, we have The Quiet Girl. This was a film I was surprised I liked as much as I did. It's not much about anything. It's just about a girl who goes to live with her aunt and uncle, basically. It's technically her mom's cousin, but I don't know. I think it was just very nostalgic for me, and I thought the child actress did a very good job and really sold her character, but just the themes that it goes into, it was just it was mainly very nostalgic for me. I think it brought up or reminded me a lot of things that I experienced as a kid, but things I haven't thought of in years. And I think any movie that can do that is something special. So I thought this was a great film. I think it's maybe on the lower end of great, but I did really like it. Next up, we have Scream 6. This is the second Scream film I've seen. I saw Scream 5 that came out last year, and I really liked Scream 5. The Scream formula was completely new to me in that movie, and I think that's what made that one feel very fresh. I think I gave that one an A. This one was still pretty good, but I give it a B. I think some of the things that were nuanced in the fifth one for me were without that nuance, it was just a good movie. But that's still worth checking out in my opinion. It's just that I didn't think it was great or necessarily a must see or something that I hadn't seen before. That's really what it takes for a movie to get into the A category. So a solid sequel to last year's film if you're looking for something to see. Shazam, this was one that I was really looking forward to. I really liked the first Shazam, but this one was just fine overall. Yeah, there were just elements of the film that didn't really work for me. I felt that Zachary Levi was acting more immature than like the Billy Batson, like Shazam as superhero Shazam is acting kind of more immature than his kid counterpart. And so that really took me out of the movie. I felt like this doesn't seem like a 17-year-old. They seem more like a 14-year-old than the character that we had in the first film, and that this character hasn't matured in the 3 years since we've seen him. That really just took me out of it. And I think, yeah, I think that's a huge part of why I didn't really care for the film. But then outside of that, there's just, I don't know, nothing really in this film that impressed me. It was, I think, yeah, it was just so. I think it's a good family film, good enough anyway, but it's a C in my book. It's not one that I'd recommend, but also don't, like, I wouldn't say stay away from this film. Like I would say for the next film, getting into Inside. This, I don't give out D's very often, but this film was very boring to sit through. I found it just kind of weird and depressing, and a lot of it didn't make any sense logically for the stuff that happens in the movie. So I felt like there was just a lot of kind of plot holes that way, and yeah, when it's boring on top of that, I was surprised to give this film a D. I was looking forward to it. I was excited to see Willem Dafoe, but I honestly would recommend not seeing that film just based off of my experience with it. Then we have A Good Person. This is a film I was really looking forward to when I had seen some of the previews for it. I like Morgan Freeman. I really like Florence Pugh. I haven't seen a ton of her stuff, but I liked her a lot in Don't Worry Darling and also in Black Widow. And she's really good in this film. I think she's definitely one of the best actresses of kind of her generation, and I'm excited to see kind of where her career goes. But this was a great film. I think it all comes down to the characters and the story. While it did feel maybe a little similar to Four Good Days, so it wasn't like the most completely new thing, it was still really fresh and wasn't quite as depressing as Four Good Days. So this film, though, I absolutely loved. I think it's a great film and recommend seeing it. And then lastly, we have John Wick 4. This is one that I was really excited for. I love the John Wick franchise. You can see them right behind me on the wall, actually, if I move out of the way a little bit. We got John Wick 2 and 3, but anyway, and then one is slightly off camera there. But this is, one of my favorite franchises of all time. It's, I think, one of the most consistent franchises as well. But John Wick 4 was, I think, very good, and I think the second half of the film is some of the best John Wick. But for me, the first half of the film felt just kind of bloated and unnecessary for some of the stuff that we saw. I feel like John Wick wasn't in as much of that part of the film. And so the first half it wasn't bad, but it was, I think, maybe a little subpar for John Wick. Even though I kind of liked seeing the expanded world and like expanding outside of New York City, that is what kind of brought the film down a little bit in my book. So this was a B. It's still a good movie and one that I recommend, but because of the first half, its shortcoming, I couldn't quite put this in the great category. If it had if they had trimmed that down, because it's almost a 3-hour movie, if they trimmed down the first half, I think that would have helped if they had made it a tighter film and then made the second half maybe more of like the second 2/3 if you kind of cut the first half down. So it's just shorter. I think that might have worked, but hey, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Maybe it would have been worse. And I know a lot of people really like this, but for me, it was, I think, my least favorite John Wick, even though it does have a really good second half. So going through these, though, that's my tier ranking for the month of March. And if we're going to put these in order of how much I liked them, starting off with the bad tier, there's only one, so we don't have to reorder that. Between Operation Fortune and Shazam, I give the edge to Operation Fortune. I liked that better than Shazam. Between Scream 6 and John Wick 4, I definitely liked John Wick 4 better, but both are really good. I think both are solidly B, and John Wick 4 is maybe on the upper end of B. And then for great tier, this one's kind of hard because all these films are fairly different and it's kind of hard to compare them. But I'd probably go with Creed 3. I think is the best of these four. And then I think The Quiet Girl is probably my least favorite. And then I'm trying to decide between A Good Person and What We Do Next. I think we'll go with this. Yeah, I think A Good Person was really good, but What We Do Next was just really unique. I like that it was set up and is like in the title card it says a film in 7 scenes, and it's, you know, that you only get 7 scenes, and it makes each of those scenes so important, I think. But those two are really close. But I think, yeah, that's a pretty good, that's my ranking, I think, for March. So if you're kind of on the fence or looking for what to see most, this is them in order for the month of March. But yeah, that does it. If you saw any movies in the month of March and want to share your own tier list, I'd love to hear it down below. Or if you just want to shout out your favorite movie from the last month, mine was Creed 3. I think that's, yeah, an absolutely great film. I think it deserves to have the best box office opening weekend of a sports film and to be the highest grossing in that trilogy so far. I think it deserves all of that. Same thing with John Wick 4. They upped the budget for that thing. That's why it's such a massive film and it's like extended out the entire or across the globe. And I think that really paid off. That's having so much success at the box office, and I'm absolutely thrilled to see that. On the flip side, Shazam has been a flop this last month, and I personally see why, because I didn't really like the film. I am still kind of confused why it's at 50% on Rotten Tomatoes. I'm like surprised to see that, you know, slightly over 50% last time I checked of critics thought it was fresh. For me, it really wasn't. So it wasn't surprising to me to see it flop as hard as it did. It's unfortunate for the character, and like, which I love from the first film, but I get it based off of the quality of this film. So yeah, that does it for my tier list. And yeah, again, comment below if you want to share your favorite movie of the month. So up next, we've got the movies and TV shows that I watched at home for the month of March. And most of these are new. I think just the one at the end, Atomic Blonde, is one that I rewatched. So this is kind of my take across the board, whether or not I recommend them. Again, I do this just to kind of share the type of content that I watch and what I like, but I also like to hear, you know, what have you been watching at home above and beyond, you know, what you saw in theaters. And I just like, you know, talking about it and sharing, because I think it speaks a lot to the sort of content that we watch, and it's just a good way to get recommendations and find new things that you might otherwise miss. So first up, we have Clueless. I think I just watched this with a friend. It was kind of a lazy Friday night, and I think we caught it on, I think it was Pluto TV. But this was fun enough. I can kind of see why it stands as a film in pop culture, but for me it was just fine. It was enjoyable enough, but I wouldn't quite put it at the level of good, even though it was really easy to sit through, and yeah, I would say just a pleasant film. Next up, Pinocchio. I had very high expectations for this film, and I was quite disappointed. I think the film is very well done for what it's going for. I think technically, like, the craftsmanship and the artistry that we see in this film is, yeah, I think that aspect of it is worthy of winning Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, which it did. However, this was by far not my favorite animated film of the year. I personally did not like this film. I found it very hard to watch, and like, I found Pinocchio very annoying. And for me, if I find the main character to be annoying, it's really hard for me to like the film. So my personal enjoyment of it, I'm kind of between fine and bad, between a C and a D. I did not like this movie. It was very hard to sit through, and anything that's that hard to sit through, I unfortunately have to give a bad. So this was a D for me. I did not. Yeah. Okay, we won't go bad. It did enough interesting things. I can't say that's a bad film. It was just not one for me, so I don't recommend it. I don't say stay away from this. I know plenty of people really like it. It was just fine for me. It did, I think, looking back on it, the negatives stand out. There were definitely some positives there, though. I liked that it kind of explored Pinocchio from a different point of view. But at the end of the day, Pinocchio was still just very annoying as a character, and that wasn't really enjoyable to watch for me. The next one is one that I was looking forward to. I had seen, like, it's been a while since it's been out, but I hadn't checked it out yet on Netflix, and that's All Quiet on the Western Front. I saw it got a lot of nominations at the Oscars, and so I actually watched this the night before the Oscars. I wanted to get it in so I could actually kind of be able to, in watching the Oscars, know whether or not I should root for it. And this film was just fine. It's very nice. I think it's shot very well, the cinematography, but a lot, like, I don't know. I just don't get why this film is as, like, acclaimed as it is. I thought it was just fine. I actually was pretty bored with it and ended up watching it at like 1.5 speed the second half of the film because that was on, yeah, the day before the Oscars, but I was binging through The Last of Us and I'm like, okay, this is pretty boring. I want to get back to The Last of Us, but I want to at least see the whole film so I can say I saw it. So I just turned the speed on Netflix up to 1.5 and finished the second half of the film that way, and I don't think I missed much of anything. So I personally didn't really care for this film a whole lot. Again, I think there's a lot of craftsmanship and just there's a lot of good work that went into this film. It's just not one that I enjoy. I'm still baffled though at some of the awards it won. I really, yeah, some of the awards it was in the same category nominated as Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I don't know. I would have liked to see those go to Everything Everywhere All at Once, but hey, if other people are enjoying this movie more than me, I'm happy. Like if I'm at the bottom of the list of like how much I enjoyed it and everyone else enjoys it more, that means there's more enjoyment in the world. So I can't really complain there. The White Lotus, this is season 2 that I watched. I watched season 1 a while back. This is a good show. I don't think it quite gets to the level of great. I think it is really well done, but I would need, it's like a little weird of a show, just kind of, I don't know. It's a little random and it's not quite like entirely my show, and especially like looking at other shows that I put in the great category, it's maybe just a hair under there. I think it is towards the top of the good tier though. I thought about putting it in great, but it's not one that I would say is a must see. It's one that I would say watch if you're looking for something to watch, but yeah, I don't think it quite gets to the level of great, but I think it does a good job, and I respect kind of all the awards that it has gotten. And then next up we have The Last of Us. This show has been so hot as I imagine it. Everybody's been watching it. I waited to binge it. I started it the day before the finale released, so I binged it all, the first, I think 8 episodes on Saturday, and then the finale was Sunday, and I watched the finale after the Oscars. So it was really fun to binge this. I have played the video game, so I was very familiar with the story overall, which if you don't want to know anything, like whether or not how much they take liberties compared to the game, I would say come back and watch this later. I'm not going to get into specifics, only talking vaguely and comparing it to the game, if it's similar or not. So since the main story is very, very similar to the game, I had already experienced that, so I didn't get the novelty of experiencing the story through the TV show as many people did watching the show. Like, this was their first exposure to the story, so I think that helped them enjoy the show a lot more. And so I liked it, but I didn't have as good of an experience as I think a lot of other people did. I do really like the changes that they've made from the game and kind of fleshing things out. Episode 3 was really good, and I'm trying to think of others, but those aspects I really liked seeing, and overall I think this is a great show. Part of me is a little bummed that I couldn't have experienced it for the first time through the medium of TV, but it was really good to experience it though in the game. So I'm excited for them to maybe eventually get to a point where they're creating new The Last of Us stories that are for the show that they haven't gotten to in the game series yet. But highly recommend it. If you haven't watched The Last of Us, definitely go check it out. It's a phenomenal show. And then lastly, we have Atomic Blonde. I'm kind of struggling with this one. I had watched it before, but I kind of had forgotten it. So I was rewatching it with a couple friends. And I had remembered it being better, I guess. Like, I had thought it was maybe in the B or A tier, but now I'm kind of between C and B. I'm not really sure where to place it. I think visually it's a stunning film, and the cinematography and like the lighting is really good, but it's not the most necessarily like revolutionary story. But I don't know. It's maybe just I think it's a little bit lower scale or lower profile sort of spy movie, and so it's not like over the top. And yeah, I think it's a good film. If you're looking for something to watch, I think it's worth watching. I think there's enough there, but it is just barely on that side. I think there's other B tier movies that I know I like better, but I think it is still better than some of the C tier movies. Like thinking to this, I think it is kind of in the tier above something like Clueless or definitely All Quiet on the Western Front. So that one's in the bottom side of the good tier. But yeah, it was. I feel like when that came out, it felt like it was going to be sort of a Charlize Theron. I never know how to say her name properly, but her playing a sort of John Wick character, and that's kind of what we got, but not quite. I think she's a lot more human, and while yeah, she's a spy that can hold her own, but she's not as I think John Wick is just on a whole nother level. I think Atomic Blonde's a lot more grounded and realistic of like what a spy could actually be. So I think that's really cool though. To like John Wick is maybe just a little bit over the top, but visually though I think it has a lot of similar flares as John Wick to just be a visually interesting film. And so that's always nice. And I watched it at home on my home theater, the 135-inch projector in 4K HDR. So like that part of it just enhances the movie experience. I don't think it would be all that enjoyable as like an airplane movie, for example. But that's what I watched at home, though. I'd love to hear what you've watched at home this last month, or if you've seen any of these. Did you like them? Especially kind of the new and more current things like The Last of Us. Is that something you've checked out? Is it something you've been on the fence about, and you're kind of waiting to see what people's recommendations are? Let me know in the comments down below. Alright, so next we've got my soundtrack recommendations for March, and I listened to a fair amount this month, and these are divided into two tiers. Maybe I could label it a little bit better, but the top row, bordered by the stars, are all the ones that I enjoyed and would recommend, like looking back at what I saved, like songs that I saved to my playlist for listening to just general soundtracks and ones that I like. These were ones that I actually saved multiple songs from. And then the other ones are ones that I listened to. They weren't bad, but they aren't ones that I saved anything to, and they didn't stand out. So we have Creed 2 and Creed 3. Those are both really good. They're done by different composers, actually, so they're maybe a little bit different. But I think Ludwig Göransson is a great composer. He did Creed 2. I forget who did Creed 3 at this point, but it's kind of nice. I mean, I think sometimes to switch up the composer between films and a franchise just to give it a little bit of freshness. But yeah, those are both ones I'd recommend. Empire of Light, I love that soundtrack. I think it has a very similar feel to what those artists have done. I think they did like Soul and The Social Network. But I love their style of music. It reminds me a little bit of Thomas Newman, just for it being kind of more like a calming and I don't know, it just feels like easy breathing sort of music, I guess. But that one I liked a lot. 80 for Brady, I was not expecting to actually like that soundtrack. I was surprised to see it was available on Spotify, but it's sung by John Debney, and I actually saved quite a few. It's just a pleasant sounding soundtrack. So The Menu as well, I think there's a few songs that kind of stood out there. And then The Fabelmans I thought was really good. John Williams he's one of the best composers out there. Not necessarily my favorite, but he's definitely up there, and I think he's arguably the greatest composer. I he's even though he's not my personal favorite, but I really liked what he did with the Fabelmans, making it very much centered on the piano and kind of more of a classical piano tunes sort of a feel. So that was nice to see. And then these other ones, The Quiet Girl, Enola Holmes 2, Avatar, The Way of Water, Scream 6, and All Quiet on the Western Front, I listened to, but I don't think I saved any songs. So nothing really stood out to me there. So if you're looking for new soundtracks, I recommend the top row of these, and then the bottom row I can't personally recommend. I spent like it blows my mind how All Quiet on the Western Front won Best Original Score. It had like one theme that it did, and that theme is like 5 notes long, I think. I don't know, or maybe it's just a couple. It's like maybe 2 or 3. It's overly simple, and I'm amazed that it got nominated for Best Original Score and then that it won. I like the Fablemans definitely should have won over it, and I think there's other things that should have been nominated over it. But yeah, that like I would have picked any soundtrack that was nominated over it. Again, no offense, like no offense to the composer. I think it does fit the film. But like, oh, that was the one. The Batman is probably my favorite soundtrack from last year. And I acknowledge that there's a difference between what's my favorite and kind of what's objectively the best. But Michael Giacchino, aside from it being my favorite, he knocked it out of the park with that film. Like, he came up with several different themes, and I don't know, it just, for that one to not get nominated and then to have, like, All Quiet on the Western Front win, that was a little hard to see, and that's not how I would have voted. But hey, it's I'm sure a lot better than what I would do for composing music. But yeah, not to take away from the composer. It's still a soundtrack. I still enjoyed listening to it. It just didn't stand out to me. So anyway, that does it for my soundtrack recommendations. If you listen to any new soundtracks this last month and care to share them or recommend them, I'd love to hear it down in the comments below. And finally, we have what I'm looking forward to in the upcoming month of April 2023. So I'm not too aware of any upcoming shows. I'm kind of working my way right now through Carnival Row. So I started that one, but since I'm kind of in the process, didn't really want to put it on the list. And I'm not too aware. I suppose Succession is out, so I don't know if that wraps in April or not. I'm going to probably wait till the finale airs and then get caught up and just binge it. But those are the only 2 things that kind of come to mind for shows. But otherwise, the movies that are coming out, I'm interested to see what the Super Mario Brothers movie is. I'm a huge Nintendo fan, but if I had to choose one franchise, it's hands down Legend of Zelda. If it's not apparent, you can't see it right now, but in my other videos, you can probably notice how much Zelda, like, figurines and memorabilia I've got on my shelves. So I do like Mario, but in my opinion, it doesn't come even close to Zelda. So I'm curious to see what this movie is, how good it is. I'm fully prepared for it to not be very good at all, but I kind of feel like for how protective Nintendo has been and how involved they've been in the process, it's got to be pretty good. But who knows, we'll see. I'm kind of expecting it to be a good kids film and not necessarily all that appealing to adults, to just be kind of a fun adventure film with not a whole lot of substance. But we'll see. Air, I'm looking forward to. I like Ben Affleck and Matt Damon. I think they're fun to watch on screen. And so I'm looking forward to this movie for them. Renfield, this I've seen the trailer for. It looks kind of interesting, and it's also taken a couple watches of the trailer for me to realize that Nicolas Cage is playing Dracula. I did not notice that at first. So that has me kind of interested to see it as well. And then lastly, I forget the specifics, but I remember seeing some trailers for The Covenant, and that looked pretty good. I like Jake Gyllenhaal. I think he's super charismatic, and I love a movie that he's playing in, regardless of what it is. So I'm definitely interested to check that one out. But those are the movies that I'm looking forward to. Maybe some stuff's off my radar, so if I haven't talked about it here and it's something you're looking forward to, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And Yeah, it's I think it's fun to kind of look forward to movies, and then you get to reflect going backwards. You're like, oh, what was I looking forward to? Did it actually live up to my expectations, or did it kind of come in short? But yeah, with that brings us up. That's our last section of the Movies Monthly. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. It just lets me know what sort of content you like. I do mostly reviews, but then I do these Movies Monthly as well. So yeah, with that though, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.